Hey y'all, welcome to the Second of Strength podcast. My name is Tanner Clark. I went from sitting at a desk to speaking on stage internationally to inspire teenagers and people like you. My goal is simple: help you find your 1 second of strength to walk away from the things that are holding you back, to step into your potential, and ultimately find happiness. Thank you for spending your valuable seconds with me today. Let's go. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful that you choose to spend a couple of seconds with me. I know there's a lot of things you could be doing, a lot of things you might be doing, but grateful that you're here, and hopefully that this helps you. Now, this episode I think is for you parents if you're listening to this, but it's also really great for our teenagers, because a lot of these things that I'm going to talk about today, our teenagers are dealing with. So feel free to share this with them, listen to it with them, so it can help your entire family. And I believe that the thing we're going to talk about today is very transformative in nature. It's going to change who you are and help you. So along with that, take a second, share this episode on your Instagram, tag me at @RealTannerClark, leave it a rating and review. If we do that, we can help more people, more teenagers, more parents to be happy. And that's ultimately what the goal here is. It's helping you, helping your family grow, be happy, and step into your potential. So without further ado, today, we are going to talk about something that I've had to overcome in my life, something that I think a lot of people deal with, but really going from the victim mentality to a victor mentality, and ways that you can use your 1 second of strength to get there. That's what we're going to talk about today. And here's the reality is so many of us have a victim mentality, and maybe not all the time, but or there's moments in our lives or moments in our day where we kind of default to being the victim. And if you don't know what that is, and maybe just a little bit of a self-assessment is the way we see the world, right? And so maybe it's we believe that bad things always happen to us, or will always happen to us. We believe that other circumstances or other people are to blame for our current situation, or things that are happening in our lives, and that any efforts we make are going to fail, and that there's no point in trying. And if we have those types of tendencies and those types of that type of mentality, then we're kind of being the victim in our lives, and it doesn't serve you, doesn't serve me to think that way. So this is about transitioning our mindset from that type of mentality to overcoming that in a place of growth, in a place of happiness, in a place of hopefulness. And so we're going to talk about how to do that. But having a victim mentality is like trapping yourself in a box, locking it from the inside, and choosing not to use the key to get out. That is what having a victim mentality is. And so what I hope you heard there is that you are in control of that. You might have put yourself in there, or we might be trapping ourselves in that box in the way that we think, but you also have the power to unlock it. You have the power to climb out of it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And there's a cognitive triad, and just to kind of frame this a little bit more, but there's a cognitive triad of how we see things, or our perception of things. And on that triad, on this triangle, is our views about ourselves, our views about the world, and our views about the future. And if you are having negative views about yourself, negative views about the world, and negative views about the future, then that is where we are slipping into this victim mentality. And so the way that might look is negative views about the world. No one values me. No one cares for me. People ignore me all the time. Bad things always happen to me. That is this negative view about the world. Negative views about the future. I'm hopeless because things will never change. Things can only get worse. We might be thinking in that type of a mindset, and if we're thinking that way, then we're slipping into this victim mentality. And then views about ourselves. I'm worthless. I'm ugly. I wish I were different. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I wish I had a better talent. That's our negative view about ourselves. And so you can see how these things are all related together in this kind of this triad. And if we're thinking negatively about ourselves, then we're going to start thinking negatively about the world. We're going to start thinking negatively about the future. But there's always a flip side of that, right? There's always shifting any one of those triads, and it starts with working on ourselves. And when we work on ourselves, we start changing the way we interpret the world around us, and we start changing our future or the way we see the future. And that is our goal today, to talk about that. And so if you are having this negative mindset or this victim mentality, it's probably manifesting, and this is a little bit, again, of a self-assessment, but it's probably manifesting in a few ways. You might be avoiding responsibility. And you might see this in other people as well. The difference is we can't change other people, but we can change ourselves. And so you might be avoiding responsibility. You might not be looking for solutions to problems. Negative self-talk, feeling powerless, frustrations or anger outbursts. You might be feeling resentment. So like if you're feeling if you're feeling any of these types of things, then you're probably ready for a mindset shift. And so there's 3 tools I'm going to give you where you can use your 1 second of strength to make this transition, mentally from victim to victor in your life. And here's the best part of this, is that when you choose to make the transition in your life from victim to victor, you're going to go from a place of struggle to strength. You're going to go from a place to darkness to light. And ultimately, you're going to go from a place of helplessness to hopefulness. Because at the end of the day, our happiness is tied to our hopefulness in the future and the positive steps we take towards that future. I'm going to say that again. Our happiness is tied to the hopefulness we feel in the future and the positive steps we take towards that future, the actions we take, the choices we make. That's where happiness comes, in seeing a hopeful future. So the first thing you have to do if you want to go from victim to victor is we have to start changing the way we see the world. And that happens by stop thinking that things are happening to you and start thinking that things are happening for you. So I want you to think about these 2 words, to and for. To is something happening to us, right? It's obviously happening to us, duh, Tanner. But it's a word that takes responsibility out of our control. It places us, just the word to places us as a victim. We are being acted upon, and we can't control anything that's happening to us. That is what the word to is doing. The word for is very different because it actually puts responsibility in our control. And it helps us take steps towards action. If something is happening for you, then it is a catalyst, a catapult to jump into what we need to do. It is helping us get to where we want to go. And that is the difference between those 2 words. And so you can live in a world of things happening to you out of your control, unable to move, placing yourself in the box, or you can place yourself in a world where things are happening for you and you are actually in control of everything you want to happen because whatever negative thing, positive thing, whatever thing just happened to you, you get to use it for your advantage to step into your potential and become the person you want to become. Again, that is where happiness comes from, because you're going to use the word for and use it for hopefulness to become the person that you want to become. And when you do that, when you start to do that, it is going to unlock your world. It is going to unlock your mindset and put you in a position of success, put you in a position of strength, and put you in a position of happiness, because you are simply just changing one word of what's happening in your world, and it's happening for you instead of to you. And simply, I want you to do this. I want you to look back of something that you thought happened to you in your life and look that it wasn't really happening to you, but it was happening for you, meaning it was putting you in a position to where good things were going to come. And I think that everybody should be able to look back on your life and think about that moment. Think about one particular thing that it was like, oh man, that sucked. But because of that, I was able to XYZ, right? I was able to do all of these things. You saw in your life a tangible experience where something happened to you, you thought, but it was actually happening for you. If that happened before, why would it not happen now? And so when something happens to you, I want you to take a second and just think, wait a minute, why is this happening for me? Why is this happening for you? Maybe it's so that you meet someone new. Maybe it's so you decide to take a different class, or you decide to take a different job, or something good is coming in your life. And it's really just because you decide to change your perspective and think about what's happening for you. So that is the first thing. Go from to me to for me. The second thing is dropping our negative attitude and focusing on gratitude. I believe that your mind cannot have these two thoughts in your head at the same time. You are thinking negatively, or you are thinking positively, meaning you're rooted in gratitude, being grateful for something, even if it's hard, even if it's bad, even if it feels constricting or detrimental to your life. There's always some silver lining of gratitude that you can find. You just have to decide to find it. And I read this statistic the other day that just absolutely blows my mind. But it said that we think on an average day, and this is probably an age-related thing, or, I don't know why there's such a disparity in this, but we think anywhere from 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts in a day. And of those thoughts, 80% are negative. 80% of our thoughts are negative. That is mind-blowing to me. And what happens is we have a negative bias. It's something that's been studied and researched, but it's this negative bias that we tend to think negatively first. And the reason is because I think it goes all the way back to our primitive selves, right? When we were hunting and gathering and doing all of these things, it was really about survival. Again, the fight or flight mentality, right? And we were trained and conditioned to look for danger. Saber-toothed tigers, things that were going to hurt us, things that were going to harm us. And so we have this negative bias that we're always looking out for the negative to protect ourselves, to put ourselves in position for survival. And we just don't need that anymore, right? There's no saber-toothed tigers that are hiding behind, the bush trying to eat us. There's nothing like that happen. We don't have to have this negative bias, but our brains are conditioned to look for the negative in things. And I think that sometimes it happens. One place where I notice it happens a lot is when someone asks you about your day or your weekend or whatever, we tend to go, yeah, it was really good. We did this, but it was really hot. But I didn't have any downtime. When we place a negative, we attach a negative to a positive in our lives, and we do it all the time. And it's something that I have been really focused on changing, is just talking about the positives. Why do I have to lace a negative with every positive in my life? I don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. But I do think it comes from this negative bias, or we believe that we need to cushion the good with the bad for some reason. And here's why we should stop doing that. We should stop thinking negatively, is because I believe that a seed of negativity in our mind is like a cancer that has the power to spiral out of control in our hearts and our minds. And unfortunately, that has a tendency to also spread into other people in our lives. And so we have to make a cognitive choice that we are going to stop negativity in our own mind, because it's too easy to spread, and it's too easy to then think the next negative thought and the next negative thought and the next negative thought, instead of breaking that cycle and deciding that we're going to think positively and shift our mindset. And the simplest way to do that is to start thinking with gratitude. And so there's lots of practices you can do. I like to start the day with gratitude. You can if you write a journal, and you should, but write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And it could be simple things. It could be that you just were able to wake up. You were able to, go on a walk. You were able to see the sunset or see the sunrise or whatever those things might be. But find gratitude. And then even more important, if you are having a negative situation, something has happened to you or something is happening for you, right? But something has happened. Find the positive in that situation. Find the good, be the good, find gratitude, find those small little things that are going to change your mindset about whatever the situation you're dealing with. It could be, maybe it's school and you have to wake up early, but you get to be awake, you get to be alive. Maybe it's work and you have to drive into work, and it's like, man, but aren't you grateful that you have a job? Aren't you grateful that you get to provide for yourself or provide for your family? But there is always some level of gratitude that you can find in any situation, in any moment of any day, if you condition yourself to find it. And the beauty of that is, once you find that thing, you will stop thinking negatively, because it is impossible to have 2 thoughts at the same time. You can't think positively. You can't think gratitude and negativity at the same time. It's impossible. So it's the quickest way to break the cycle and go from victim to victor and stop thinking negatively. The third thing and the last way you can find your 1 second of strength to overcome negative thoughts and go from victim to victor is really just changing your perspective. Changing the perspective on how you see things, because at the end of the day, there are things that you can't avoid. And if you can't avoid something, or something has happened to you, then welcome it. Embrace it and use it to your advantage. Use it to move on. And this is the perception that's going to change. Last week, I went whitewater rafting, and if you've never been whitewater rafting, it is a blast. It is invigorating, but we were up near Jackson Hole, Wyoming, whitewater rafting. And on this particular day, it was cold. The water was cold. It had snow runoff, so the water was cold. In fact, the first splash of my face that I got of water, I literally got brain freeze on the outside of my face, and I was in pain. But so picture yourself in this situation with cold water, and then not to mention, not only was the water cold, but it was a torrential downpour. It was raining so hard that even before you got to the boat or the raft, even before you got there, you were soaking wet. And so here we are with our group. We're sitting on this raft in the middle of this river. We are cold. We are wet. We've got an hour and a half in front of us of just honestly being miserable. And in that moment, I could have focused on that negative place. I could have focused on what was happening there. But instead, I raised my glance and I looked up at the surroundings around me. And it was the most beautiful setting I have ever seen. We're sitting on this river. There are green pine trees all the way down to the river. Because of the clouds and because of the rain, the negativity, right? There was beautiful cloud forests that were all around us in and up in the mountains. And it was just the most surreal, serene settings that we wouldn't have had any other way. If it was sunny outside, I wouldn't have seen that beauty. If it wasn't raining, I wouldn't have seen that beauty. And so I chose to raise my glance and look at the horizon instead of focusing on the problem that was right in front of me. It's the perspective we take that changes our mindset and changes our attitude around us. And there was a recent podcast, Jamie Kern-Lima, who is launching a new book pretty quick here, but she says in this book, she said, and she was talking about rejection, but I want to just put anything on it, right? But she's talking about rejection, and she said, rejection is God's way of hiding your value from people who are not part of your destiny. And think about that from a perspective moment, right? Like if you have a negative thing happening to you, right? in this case, being rejected, in this case, sitting on a cold river, or you place your challenge, your problem there. And we talk about things happening for you. Maybe instead of that bad thing happening, maybe it's God's way of protecting you or putting you in the best position to be successful in your life. And over time, I have seen that time and time again, and it has enabled me to change my perspective on life, to step into who I can become. And when you do that, when you choose to change your perspective on the surroundings that are around you, you will unlock growth, happiness, belief, hopefulness in your life in a way that you will not be able to measure, except someday you will look back and you will realize how incredible your journey was because you choose to take a positive perspective instead of sitting in the victim mentality. So I hope that wherever you're at, and look, you don't have to be a victim in all things, but everybody is a victim in some way, in some moment in the day. Again, we think negative thoughts all the time. 80% of our thoughts, negative. That is a ton of negative thoughts. So if we are sitting in this negative space, then it's all about how can we overcome that to position ourselves for a future filled with growth and happiness. And it comes down to using your 1 second of strength in those 3 ways. Number 1, shifting that things are happening for you instead of to you. Number 2, focusing on gratitude and having an as they say, an attitude of gratitude, but focusing on gratitude instead of negativity. And the third thing is changing your perspective, changing the way you see the world and changing your mindset around that. And when you do those 3 things, I promise life will begin to change for you. And that change can be immediate for some things, but also over time, it is going to change your entire future. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending your seconds with me. I'm grateful that you are on this journey with me. And please send me a note on Instagram. Let me know what you thought of this episode, how it helped you. And I can't wait to talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope it helped you. If you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss another episode and leave a review for the show. And as always, go find your 1 second of strength and be happy.